Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be talking about pandas. And in the previous tutorial, we've seen how to work with NumPy, the NumPy library. So the pandas is also a library built by a developer and made available for every Python developer for use. So it was built on top of NumPy library and deals with three major structures: a series, a data frame, and a panel. So most of the time you'll be working with series and data frame. Most people don't get to even work with panel throughout their career. So majorly, the pandas library deals majorly with the series and data frame, but it has a structure that is called panel as well. So majorly, a series is just a one-dimensional labeled homogeneous array, and the data frame is two-dimensional labeled heterogeneous array with columns, and a panel is simply a 3D labeled size mutable array. We're going to understand what this means as we follow through this tutorial. So let's look at the series. So the series is a one-dimensional array, like it's just like a list in Python, but it has index. So something like just this. So this is a series and it's a collection of integers. So you have 10, 23, 56, 17, like that. So this is just the one-dimensional array. It's just like a single array in NumPy. So, but in Pandas, it is called a series. So the key point of a series is it's a homogeneous data, meaning it is one-dimensional. It is size immutable. Then the values of the data are mutable. That means you can change these values. You can change the individual values, just like how you can change the values of an array, how you can change the values of a list, element of a list, like that. You can change them, but you cannot change the size. Meaning that once this series now, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it has 10 elements. So you cannot change it to 9. But you can change these individual elements, these values, you can change them you can change their values, but you cannot change this overall size. You cannot reduce it or increase it. So that's just majorly about the series. So the data frame is just a two-dimensional array with heterogeneous data. So it's two-dimensional. So you can see it has it has rows, it has columns, and it has rows. So these are the columns: name, age, gender, rating, and these are the rows. We have a row for Steve, this first row Steve, this second row Leah, Vin, and Katie. So it is two-dimensional. So the table represents a sales of a team organization with the overall performance rating, and the data is represented in rows and columns. So each column represents an attribute. So this column now, it's the name, is the attribute's name. It can represent an attribute. You can say it's an attribute, or you can call it a feature. So each column represents a feature or an attribute. So this is name, age, gender, rating. So and each row represents a person. So this row belongs to Steve. So all the attributes of Steve will be found in this first row. All the attributes of Leah will be found in this second row, and so on and so forth. So the data types of the columns, when you look at the name, is a string. The age is an integer. And the gender is also a string. And the rating is a float. So remember we talked about floats and integers in Python, in data types in Python. So float just simply means that it adds a decimal. It is a decimal number. So that's just that. So the key point of a data frame is it is heterogeneous data. It is size mutable, meaning you can remove columns, you can delete columns, you can add columns, you can delete the rows, and it is data mutable. You can also change the values of the data. So that is that about the data frame. And the panel is also, instead of having a two-dimensional structure like the data frame, the panel is just a three-dimensional structure with heterogeneous data. So it is hard to represent the panel in a graphical representation, but a panel can be illustrated as a container of data frame. So you can see it as something that contains more than one various data frames. So most of the time you won't be working with panels, so just get the concept of series and data frame get it clear. So enough of the talking, let's get our hands dirty. So before I forget, the major key features of Pandas include it can create fast and efficient data frame. It also provides us with tools for loading data from different file formats. You can align your data and handle missing files. You can reshape and pivot your data set. You can also group the data and perform aggregations. And you can also work with time series. So we'll look at all of this in details. So just keep going with me and then you would understand it more better. So let's get started. So remember, the Pandas is not an inbuilt Python library. So if we were on a Python idle, or we were using an IDE that is not Google Colab, that is not cloud supported, we would have had to download Pandas manually, we would have had to install Pandas so as to have access to it, because it's not inbuilt in the Python library. So but on Google Colab, everything is inbuilt, has been downloaded. Rather, let me put it that way. Everything has been downloaded, so you don't have to install or do anything. All you need to do is just import the libraries you would need to use in your file. So here, so most of the time when we are working with Pandas, you will also need to use some of the functions of NumPy. You remember, Pandas was built on NumPy. So we import our Pandas as PD. You can import as anything, but PD, just like NP is the custom for NumPy, PD is also the custom for Pandas. So you can, here I've imported Pandas as PD and NumPy as NP. So let me just clear this so you don't get confused. Let me run this cell. So yes, that's it. So we've imported our Pandas and we've imported NumPy. So now let's look at how we can create series in using Pandas, using the Pandas library. So majorly, a series function, you simply just say my series is equal to PD. Remember, we imported Pandas as PD, so instead of having to reference Pandas when we want to use a function, we use PD. You simply just say PD.series. The S is in capital letters, remember, and take note of that. PD.series. So the series takes 4 major arguments. It takes the data you want to represent in series, the index you want to give them, the data type of the data you're imputing, and then copy. So you can see that this name is none by default, this copy is false by default, the index is none, the d type is none. So you can either insert the data only and all other values will be inferred by the series. What do I mean by this? Okay, let me just create a series using an array. Okay, let's just create an empty series and just say my series. Let's see what this will be. So we've created an empty series, nothing is inside. D type is float. So the default data type is float 64. We have an empty series. So majorly, we can create a series using 3 types of data. We can create a series using arrays. So to create a series using arrays, I can simply just say array is equal to, so we need numpy here, np.array, and then remember a series is a one-dimensional structure, so I need to pass in just, let me use 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have our array. So I can say my series, and let me overwrite the one at the top. My series is equal to pd.series, and then I can pass in my data as the array I've created here. So let's see what we get printed, what will be produced here. You see, this is our series and this is the index. So usually when you don't pass in any particular order of index, the Pandas series will assume the np.range function. Remember np.range function, it starts from 0 and stops at the length of your array. So it will just start at 0 and it will stop at the length. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the default index will now be np.range of 5. So you remember it will start from 0 and then 5 will not be included. So you see we have 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 here. So, but if you want to have a customized index, you can pass in our index argument. I will say index is equal to, let's say we want to use something like A, B, C, D, E. We have five values. Now let's print this and see what we are going to get. So you see we have our index as A, B, C, D and E. So D type is what? Int. So I can also change this D type because this is the inferred value. Pandas has checked these values and say okay, it seems this is an int value. So I can change this to, I can say D type is float. So automatically it will change my value to float. You see it has added 0.0 to it. So there are a lot of things you can do to manipulate your values and how it appears. So that is just an example of how to create series using arrays. You can also use the Python dictionary. You can use a Python dictionary to create your series. Let's say we have my dict. Remember, to create a dictionary we use the curly braces and you pass in the keys and values. Remember, let's say we have okay, let me just use F and let me just assign some random values, and then G, I'm assigning, let's say 8, and 5, let me say high, and 7, and J to be, let's say 12. So if I say my series, let me create my series 2 now, is equal to pd.series my dict. Guess what will happen? My series 2, let's see what gets printed out. You see, so the Pandas series is to read these keys and make them the index and use the values as your data. So you see, so if I now say something like this now, by passing an index, and I say index is, let me just use some values that are not in this dictionary, and let's see, let me just mix them. Let me say G and J, just for you to understand what is happening on the ground. Let me now put, let's say E. E is not in our dictionary. H and F, and let's see what we get printed out. So you see, it has been rearranged. Now we have G, so it will check the index of which one has, it will check G in my dictionary, and that would be the first index. So you see we have 8. J, there is, okay, we have J to 12, and we have 12 here. E, there is no E in my dictionary, so it will fill it with a non value. Non means not a number, so it is an empty value, it's a missing value, so it is not a number. So there is no E, there is no E, there is no key with E in our dictionary, so it will replace with it. So you see, that is just simply how the dictionary, when you're working with dictionary, that's how it works. So it's either you just fix in your index in the order you want it in your dictionary, or you just fix in or you use arrays to create your series. So when you're using dictionaries, you have to be careful of your indexing so that you don't get a non value. So that is pretty much about creating it with dictionaries. You can also use scalar values. Scalar values meaning just one number, and let's say my series 3 is equal to pd dot series, and let me just say 5 as my number, and say index is, let me just say 0 1, let me use the default value, and then let me print this out, my series 3. So you see, you have all this index and it has 5 as all its values. So you can use scalar values to create, but you have to pass in an index, because if you don't pass in an index, there is no way Python will know. It will just have, that means your series will have a single value. You just have a single value. So that's about creating series, and you can change your data type. You can pass in an index, a customized index, or the series will just create an index for you using the range function, or you can use a dictionary to create your series, or you can use scalar value, that is a single value, and pass in the index, the number of series you want to be created for you. So let's just briefly go over what we've talked about. We've said Pandas. Pandas is a library that was built upon NumPy, and it deals with 3 major structures: the series, the data frame, and the panel. We said most of the time you'll be working with series and data frame. So series is simply just a one-dimensional labeled homogeneous array, and data frame is 2-dimensional, and a panel is 3-dimensional. So the key points about the series is it is a homogeneous data, meaning it's just one-dimensional. The size immutable, you cannot change the number, but the values of the data are mutable. You can change the individual values of the series. The data frame is a 2-dimensional structure. It consists of rows and columns. So the rows, each of the columns represents a particular attribute or features, and the rows represent a particular section or a person or anything. So you can change, it is an heterogeneous data, you can change the size. That means you can delete the rows, you can delete columns, and you can also change the data, the individual data that is contained in the data frame. And the panel is just like a container of different data frames. It's a 3-dimensional structure with heterogeneous data. So that is majorly what we've talked about so far, and we've talked about how we can create series using arrays, dictionaries, and scalar values. So please practice more and more and more so you can get the concept well. See you in the next tutorial.